I'm V.
And I'm B.
And today we have a very special podcast. This one is a little bit more tailored. This is not someone on an active homestead or how to homestead or anything like that. This is going to be specifically safety tips. What can we do? We need to be safe. A lot of people are talking about being self-sufficient or living homestead, prepping, all those things. But a lot of times they're not, like, they barely have a first aid kit, or they have a whole bunch of stuff and don't know how to use it, or never did CPR or things like that. So today we are going to talk about what we can do without going broke because everybody knows that homesteaders like to save money. So we're going to talk about that today. So today we have Ashlee, and she is from Dallas, Texas, and she is with the company EMERG. And that company is fantastic. I'm not going to talk about it. I'm going to let her talk about it. Otherwise, everybody knows that I'm long-winded and I'll get going. Isn't that right?
Yeah.
I know you're over here bob and weave over here. So, Ashlee, first let's start off with what even led you to EMT and what are your credentials?
Hi there. So, years ago, I actually started off as a CNA. I was forced into healthcare, actually. By somebody that was pretty close to me. I started off as a CNA, and I just really fell in love with working in healthcare and helping people, but I really just wanted something a little bit more fast-paced than working in the long-term care facilities, and the town that I was living in hosted an EMT course, and so I took it, and I never really looked back. So I've been in EMS now for 7 years. I am currently a Texas certified paramedic, and I hold multiple instructor cards, which include EMS instructor, CPR, and basic life support instructor cards, ACLS, which is the advanced cardiovascular life support, pre-hospital trauma life support, and also wilderness first aid.
So, none of us have that.
No.
Which is why you're talking and not me, because everybody else can just say, oh, we can do a wound. Well, first of all, I'll put Neosporin on anything. That Neosporin and A&D, I'll slap that up on anything and call that a fix.
Those are the staples of the first aid kits, I'm telling you.
So, but what you're saying is I have a future in healthcare. That's what I'm hearing.
No.
It's possible, very much.
So, his solution is rinse everything with peroxide. That's what you need to do. You just rinse it off with peroxide and hope for the best.
Hey, sterile saline peroxide, it's almost the same thing, kind of, if you tilt your head just right and look at it.
Exactly.
So, I think first we should talk about is your company. So that way when we're referencing it later, people know what we're talking about. So, what is EMERG?
So, EMERG was founded in 2011, and we began doing EMT courses in the Dallas Metroplex area, and we've kind of grown a lot since then, but our main focus is still EMT and advanced EMT courses. So we host multiple EMT courses every year at our flagship office in Dallas. We also go out to several of the area high schools and teach the EMT course at the senior level for high schoolers, so that hopefully when they get done with school, by the time they graduate, they can also sit for National Registry and come out ready to work as an EMT.
That's awesome. So the high schools, would that be something you would teach?
I do sometimes, yeah. I've taught at the Bisky Career High School for a couple of years now. Also, Grand Prairie High are two of the schools that I personally have taught at. We also go out to Roosevelt High School here in Dallas, and we teach that class too.
And now I know there's a lot, times infinity, a lot of homesteaders in Texas. Yeah. Whether they say that they're hobby farming, homesteading, prepping, self-sufficiency, farming, whatever, Texas holds a lot, especially Eastern Texas. The northeastern part of Texas is super huge. I mean, we know a ton of people there. And so if somebody was interested, is this something that like they can go to your facility with them being local and get a class?
Absolutely. So, like our EMT classes, we have both traditional and hybrid options. So if you're not necessarily super close to the Dallas area, you can do like the bookwork stuff online and then, come in for skills. Our CPR classes can be done at our office. I have been known to travel occasionally for CPR classes that are kind of larger in size, but we travel for those too. But we've got a lot of different options for people either close by or not so close, because we do also do classes all over the state of Texas. We've got one going on up in the Panhandle right now, up in the Pampa area.
You know, it's a good thing you mentioned that you do sometimes travel, because now would be a good time for us to announce that in 2023 we will be having a meetup. We will be having a meetup with a lot of people who are speaking in this podcast, us as well as other people who are not speaking in the podcast, but they'll be coming as experts. There will be other things that you can learn, get certified for. People will have their books, be signing. It's going to be a really huge thing. We will announce more details and dates and things like that here shortly before the end of the year. So stay tuned for that. And we will be possibly looking to you to see if you can come and lead a quite large CPR class.
I'm sure we could probably figure something out.
So now that we know who you are and what you do, and we know that I'm obviously on the verge of being a medical professional myself, clearly, dear.
You're not.
He puts me down, but really he means that I can do anything. He means it. So what would you say, top things, if you had to pick right now, everybody should have in their house right now?
Top one thing or top two things?
We'll do top three.
Top three. Tourniquets, gauze, quick clot.
I have gauze.
What and quick clot, is that for like if you're bleeding out or something?
It is. It is exactly that. They call it a hemostatic agent, and so they call it like a Z-fold gauze, but it's got hemostatic agents in it. So if you've got like a really deep gaping wound or something, and it sounds painful, and it is painful, but you take the quick clot and you kind of shove it into that wound, and those hemostatic agents will help clot so that you would stop bleeding faster.
That's horrible.
Well, we're fortunate. We don't live that far from town. Mm-hmm. I mean, we do have 911 service here, but I mean...
That would be something to have on hand, though.
Yeah, and a lot of people, I mean, even out here, like, if you didn't have a car, I mean, you're just waiting, and we know a lot of people who are stuck at home with kids, and they only have one car, so they can't get in, or they're way out. They don't even have cell phones or nothing, so this is like... That's a huge thing that you should have. I always seem to have gauze, but I guess it's because it comes in my first aid kit. I haven't consciously bought multiple things of gauze to actually have.
So, hemorrhage, like bleeding out, is like the number one preventable cause of death. And so when I actually teach Stop the Bleed classes, so that's another class that I teach also, is a specific class to stop the bleed. Those are the three things that we really deal with when we're doing skills for that class: is tourniquets, gauze, quick clot.
All right.
Good to know. Well, I think that I didn't even know that was a class. I literally have never heard of that in my life.
It is. It is actually an international movement right now, so that it's something that, they want everybody to learn, because it's honestly so easy to do, and bleeding out is very preventable if you know the steps to take to stop it. It's something that everybody can do.
So to kind of relate this down, so we have goats, and our goats do not have horns, but a lot of people's goats do. So if you have, let's say you have a mature buck, he comes for you, and he gets you with that horn. What are the odds that quick clot would work in a situation like that? I mean, that would be, or how much should you have on hand? Because that would be like a massive gaping wound.
Yeah.
So honestly, the packages they look small, but because it's a Z fold and they're pretty compact looking, there's a lot that comes in one package. But usually, I suggest keeping 2 to 3 packages on hand at any given time.
Okay. That's good to know. Because we literally don't have it at all. And there's been times where we got cut pretty good. Not bleeding out cut, but you don't know. Last year we had that ice storm. We were literally like sliding down the driveway. At any point in time, we could have fell on a T-post, corner of a trailer. Anything.
It's easy to do.
Yeah. Do you respond to a lot of farms?
We do, actually. Farm accidents actually can be sometimes the most serious calls that we've responded to.
Well, what do you what is normally when you're called out? Is it? When I hear a farm call, I picture somebody's got a limb stuck in a tractor.
That is a thing. So some of the more common things that we respond to out on farms are going to be like splinting limbs, insect bites, snake bites. Those are broken limbs and bites usually are the big ones.
Okay, I did put in my notes that you wanted to make a special announcement about snake bites.
Please do not suck out snake venom with your mouth.
Yeah.
It is a terrible idea. It does not work like they say in the movies. Please don't.
I
really thought it did.
I knew that was going to blow you away.
The problem is if you have any like cuts in your gums or cavities or anything like that, that venom is going to go right.
Yeah, well now
you're dead too. Then
yeah, now that you think that through, now it doesn't sound like a good idea.
That sounds stupid.
I saw that in the notes and I was like, okay, we're gonna give that the time to shine.
Yeah,
I know. Whatever. That's the 2 things I remember. I think it's like pee on jellyfish and suck out a snake.
Hey, I did not say that.
Well, I think that there's probably some people that are like, why would you even think you could suck out snake venom? And then there's going to be people like, well, you really cannot suck out.
We all can't be Steve Irwin out here.
No, well, we try.
Yeah.
Yeah. R.I.P. to Steve Irwin. I would say the things that I worry about personally on our homestead would be things like I do have a bum foot. So, what happens if I don't know, what happens if I can't get out of something fast enough? Like if you have a bull or a boar or a buck or a ram and you can't get out of the way. So those things are very real. You have a thing with slip and fall like that. You fall down and blow your back out often.
Well,
you're very clumsy.
I always have been.
So I would say splinting limb for you, being impaled for me. Definitely. So those are what we're gonna call our top accidents that could happen to us personally. So our store first aid kits, if you go to Walmart and you just grab the $9.97 kit, which I've literally done, what should I be kind of spiraling off that, or is that enough other than making sure I have a tourniquet and quick clot, or?
It all really just depends on what your personal needs are. They can be fine. It just depends on where you're keeping it and what it is that you're really wanting it for. Different products can be a little bit harder to get, but EMERG, my company, actually puts together custom first aid kits for purchase that are completely tailored to the individual that is ordering it. But beyond your gauze, some saline peroxide, and the like the quick clot and the tourniquet. First aid, honestly, is it's a MacGyver sport. EMS in general, I call it a MacGyver sport. It's only stupid if it doesn't work.
Well, that's a good analogy.
So is peroxide good to use? Because I've heard yes and no.
I mean, if you got a large gaping wound, I probably wouldn't use it. If you fell down and just scraped your knee a little bit, it's probably okay. Obviously, on the ambulance, we use a lot of sterile saline, so that sterile saline is typically my go-to to rinse something out.
That'd be better to have on hand than peroxide?
In my opinion. But
where do I get sterile saline? Do you Google that? Where do you get that?
Yeah, that was my next question.
So you can get it online. That is one of those ones that can be harder to get than other things. But yeah, you can Google it online. Amazon has it. You can find it in little bottles. It's salt water, is what it is.
Okay.
So, I would say for the people, I would say people who definitely have machinery and things like that. I mean, the custom first aid kit is huge.
Yeah.
Because I don't know if we're going to be severing our limbs, getting caught up. But I mean, I've heard about, especially when we were back in Nebraska and stuff, people getting caught in their balers or...
using a chainsaw, you never know.
Oh, yeah, using a chainsaw. Well, fortunately for us, ours never worked.
Not right now, anyway.
So, you can't get your arm chopped off, you can't get that bad boy started up.
Exactly.
But that is a question for Steel and another day.
Yeah.
So, I will say, my question was, my son now, we're fortunate, he's 13, but I know a lot of people with little kids, and then I'm like, should they be having a separate first aid kit? Because little kids are tiny.
As long as it's not medications, the first aid kits are pretty well the same. If you're looking more towards your Tylenol and ibuprofen, make sure you are following doctor's orders about what your child can and cannot have, depending on their prior health needs and their age, and make sure that you're following all of the directions for the dosing. But as far as tourniquets and gauze and stuff, all of that stuff works just the same on children. The only thing that you have to kind of keep watch on is your commercial tourniquets. So if you buy an actual tourniquet, just know that the smaller the child, obviously the smaller their limbs, and so that commercial tourniquet may not work because they're typically made for adult limbs. So you can improvise a tourniquet for them, but small infants, a standard commercial tourniquet may not work.
Well, that's good to know. Or adults that are really tiny. I mean, we know some friends personally, and they're just small stature, just very small.
Yeah.
On the contrary, you're extremely muscular, and your arms are quite large. So, yeah, we might have to think about that. Not me. I'm a noodle. Just spaghetti arms all day. So, I'm completely useless when it comes to that. So, I'll just be nice and average. I will say something that I just thought of would be what she said about having the medicines and things like that for kids. We have a segment that'll be up for holistic healthcare and things like that. I do know some people want to lean more traditional and things like that, and we will kind of tie that in later into the series, but just be your own judge when you're making your medicine cabinet and your preps. Just use your brain and realize that just because it works for Sally doesn't mean it's going to work for you, and Sally's not wrong and you're not wrong. You just need to do whatever you need to do for you, because I know we have some super crunchy people, and I know we have some traditional people, and some people who do both, and it is absolutely fine. We do not care what you do regardless. We just want everybody to be safe. So who, on that note, speaking of safety, who should be taking CPR and first aid?
Everybody. Absolutely everybody. My philosophy is if they are old enough to understand what is happening in the course, you should take it. You should take a CPR course as soon as possible and keep that certification up by doing the class every 2 years. I teach primarily American Heart Association courses, so those cards are good for 2 years. But I believe everybody should take CPR and first aid.
So, I agree. I think that a lot of times adults will take it, but then teens don't take it. And then an adult goes down and the teen doesn't know what to do. And that also goes to, some people, I have some homestead friends, their 8-year-olds are years beyond many 20-year-olds. And it's very important to work with them on what do they need to do, what are the first steps, call 911, keep themselves safe. All that stuff really rolls into this. You just really have to, everybody in the family should be educated on it. We always joke, I react immediately to things, and we always joked with Braxton and my brother that they always have a 5-second delay. And the reason we say that is because when things happen, my brain just jumps in. It just knows, like, we have to do this. Their brain does not work like that. It has to process the whole situation first, think about it, and that time is precious. And when people panic and they're not sure what to do, because if I asked him right now, Braxton would be like, yeah, I know, I'll do this. If it was an emergency, he would have to stop and think about, okay, this is happening, she's bleeding, I need to go get this, instead of me just reacting. So it's very important that everybody knows what's going to work best for them, and just having that knowledge so that it's like riding a bike, that's what's going to save time.
Absolutely. We have a saying, which is time equals brain and heart muscle. So the more people who are trained and are able to start CPR before other medical personnel can arrive are just going to increase the chances of survival and allow a loved one to spend more time with their family.
Yeah, that's very important.
Yeah.
One thing I know with a lot of manual labor that we're doing, and a lot of people are older getting into it, and I've had some heart stuff. What are you able to advise on? What would be your first step if somebody was having a heart attack before medical professionals can get there?
So, if somebody is having chest pain, the first thing that we want them to do is sit down and stop whatever it was that they were doing beforehand. And if they are outside in the sunshine, we need to try to get them out of the heat or extreme cold, depending on where you're at, and get them into a more, kind of neutral environment. Get them sat down, keep them up and talking, call 911 as soon as possible. Because if they're having, a heart attack, there's not a whole lot that can be done outside of a hospital, just out on your own. Just call 911 as soon as possible. Keep them up, keep them talking, and stay on the phone with that 911 dispatcher. And, one thing for me as a, medical person that comes out on the ambulance, if you're out on a homestead especially, or if you are in a large building, that has a lot of people, I need to know where. I need to know how do I get to you. So the more directions that you can give to that dispatcher to get the ambulance to you is just going to help cut down on that time. What is the best way for me to get my ambulance into wherever you are?
Yeah, well, and that goes to, we were at a crossroads of, we are very prepper minded. We want to be private. Yes, we have the podcast. Yes, we have social media, but that is not our exact whereabouts, our exact moves, our all of these things. But we want it to be way out. But then on the flip side of it, you really need to beyond your game. You need to be willing to, you got to be willing to die, actually. Because when you're out there and you're by yourself, if you're choosing to ignore, okay, I'm going to have these on hand, or I'm going to have this on hand, and I'll get it later, you just really don't have those liberties. When you're 5 miles from town, or, you're 15 minutes from town, or you're off a major highway, or whatever, you probably have 911 service. You live in the middle of the national forest, and you don't want a mailbox, you don't want a sign or anything. You have to be prepared. It's not, if you don't want to go to the hospital, fine. If you don't want to call 911, fine, but you got to be willing to understand those consequences then. And you need to be prepared for what can happen. And definitely everybody in your household needs to be aware. But I would encourage everybody to really think long and hard about what is your plan, because that's the part of preparedness. Everybody thinks that they'll do these things, but they don't practice. They don't, do you know how to use this cloth? Do you know how to make the gauze stick? Do you know if anything's expired? Do you know? So just checking these things often, especially when you're in the middle of nowhere and you have no access to anyone.
Right.
We're not even far, and we just barely got our address a few months ago.
Yeah.
After years. So you just never know. I will say, on that note, do you have any holistic advice on quick things? I know you said you come out a lot because, bug bites and things like that. So what would be just a quick holistic thing that they could do for those things?
So my probably top 3 holistic things that I go for, the first one is witch hazel. I always have witch hazel at my house. It's great for bug bites and sunburns.
Sunburns, you need that. You burn up like a lobster every year.
I know.
Looking like a stop sign in the middle of June.
Yeah, it's great for just like the itches and bug bites, sunburns. Aloe vera, also great for sunburns. And then, now, don't go crazy with it. Meat tenderizer. Okay? You take unseasoned meat tenderizer, you mix it with some water, you make a paste, and it's great for things like bee stings or other Hymenoptera-style insect stings.
That's what we needed to know when I was getting stung by these wasps. We have tons of wasps around here, and they just had a field day like I was a pincushion. But if I was allergic, that'd have been a bad day.
Yeah.
Bad day. And he was like, I didn't get you that bad, it's alright. I was swelled up. I said, this is it. This is how I go. All this time I've been putting on this earth, and a bee sting or a wasp is going to take me out. He told me I was being dramatic, and turns out I actually was. But
I'm going to hop on wood real quick and say I can't relate. I've never been stung by a bee or a wasp.
Oh, yeah. Now you got to watch your back all summer. All summer.
It's not fun.
On the wood.
I will say, I hear a lot about witch hazel. That is a huge thing.
Yeah.
Our Walmart's, we've been trying to get it for our Walmart's been sold out for months and months of it because it comes in and people just get it. What is beyond? We talked a little bit about, okay, you're having a heart attack. These are some things you can do till somebody gets there. But what are some things that are the first aid kit's going to do nothing for you? I mean, we need to get emergency help, and we need to figure something out right now.
Somebody's unconscious, angulated limbs. We all know we've all rolled our ankles or, done something and it just kind of hurts. But if something is actually angulated, call that in.
And for some listeners, what does angulated mean? Hanging there, basically?
Yeah, if your forearm, is supposed to be straight, right?
Mm-hmm.
If the middle of your forearm is at a 90-degree angle,
yeah,
that's not...
Understood.
That's probably bad.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Probably.
So, if your arm looks like Harry Potter with no bones, that's a problem.
It does. Yes. Yeah. So, and then massive bleeding, or if you have to use a tourniquet where you have to use that quick clot, that also needs to be called, like, that needs to be called in. You need to, if you have to resort to those things, you really need to be seen in a hospital and call that in.
And I will say another thing, when I was getting feedback from people about your episode, they wanted to know, because they knew people, or it was on the news in their town, or whatever, people go out and they're shooting. They're shooting targets, they're shooting, they're hunting, whatever, and inevitably they shoot their friend, or they shoot somebody. So now somebody's been shot. So what do you do until EMS get there? Is that basically, is it like TV? Are we like really applying pressure to that?
Yes.
Okay.
Look
at that. All those years of Law and Order.
Yeah. If they're bleeding, the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to apply pressure. If that bleeding does not stop within 5 or 10 minutes, that's when we need to start looking at the tourniquet or the quick clot or something of that sort. But the first step to all bleeding control, unless it's like super big and just really deep and lots of blood, but typically the first step is going to be direct pressure. Take some gauze, hold pressure, tight pressure. It is not going to be comfortable for the person that was shot, but that is the first stop.
Let's hope nobody gets shot.
Right.
But I'm really surprised. I mean, once I was looking that up, like statistically, it's outrageous how many people are shot on their own.
Yeah.
Just shooting themselves, or turning around fast and hunting together, and somebody shooting somebody, or shooting people with bows.
And do not attempt to take the bullets out with tweezers.
All right.
Okay. So, I mean, technically Law and Order 50-50,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
I mean, Olivia Benson, she's pulled a bullet or two. You know what I mean?
So, on that note, I guess, what's the most common accident you're called out to?
Like, not homesteads necessarily, but just in general.
So, in general, probably the most common ones are going to be people falling and injuring a limb, or they fall and they get stuck somewhere.
Well, we saw that, there's a series for a guy, and he's on YouTube, and we stumbled upon him, and he was doing a series on places you shouldn't go, and people went anyway, and we were just sitting there like jaw dropped at how many people are places that make no sense, like falling inside, behind pipes, and are in air vents and industrial buildings and like all kinds of things. I was like, what is going on? So I'm not really surprised at the getting stuck somewhere. I guess
it's a lot easier to do than you. I mean,
I guess it is easy to do.
It is a lot easier. We have kind of a running joke in EMS about the Bermuda Triangle of the bathroom, which is the awkward little space in between the toilet and the bathtub. Usually, a lot of people get stuck there.
Really?
That is very interesting.
Okay.
I don't get... Well, and on the note of the bathroom, I was surprised that it was, or I wasn't surprised that people falling, because slip and falls, I mean, or just like, like out in our driveway, it's all white rock. I like step down and about lose an ankle twice a week. So I'm not really surprised about the people falling, I guess.
Yeah.
No. But we've not, knock on wood, you've never broken a bone or anything. But it is kind of shocking how many people just breaking bones all the time. All the time.
Got weak bones. Don't drink enough milk.
I know. Raw milk for the win. So, do you have any advice to try to not get stuck in the Bermuda Triangle of your bathroom?
Honestly, well, not necessarily the bathroom one, but it's just really watch where you're walking, running, and climbing, and just be smart in slick weather. Use the salt the ice, and just be smart. That's all I got.
I really wish that.
So the opposite of what I do in bad weather.
Yes, 100%.
Yeah.
I just rush in.
Yeah, and every year he falls down. Every year, I don't know how he has a tailbone or back, and I just don't get it. He'll fall this year. It just makes no sense.
Not now.
Oh yeah, now because you've had the safety course.
Now I'm prepared.
Yeah, well, I spent most of the winter in Crocs because that was the only thing that I wasn't slipping. My muck boots were terrible because I was like out there on the ramp. And then we did homesteading while aging, homesteading for seniors, and she's up there in New York, and she was like, "Well, don't you have spikes on your muck boots?" And I was like, No, I do not. So obviously now I have to have spikes on my muck boots. I'm telling you, people in the deep north, they know.
Yep.
They know what's up.
You gotta listen to them when it comes to that cold weather stuff. They know what's up.
I know. See, Nebraska, I just avoided the issue by completely complaining about everything and trying not to go outside.
It was mostly snow in Nebraska.
It was mostly snow. Here, these ice storms are crazy. Inches and inches of ice. I mean, you couldn't even go outside. I mean, we were trying to be proactive this year. I think we're going to do string line or something. We tried to do it before. It didn't really work out. So I think we're going to do something like heavier duty to get a rope system going around because our whole property slopes south to north. There's like no safe haven out there. The dogs are running around everywhere, and they were slipping around. It was absolute anarchy. So I'm going to try to get some type of rope system. And believe it or not, we salted. We put it down. We got the pet safe salt and everything, put it all down. And, yeah, I was miserable. And that's because we don't have concrete. We've got the white rock. And so we were just trying to wander around. The grass was slick. The weeds were slick. The dirt was slick. It was miserable.
It's horrible.
So I will say, you've given us a lot of time. And I appreciate you so much for that. But what tips or advice can we leave listeners on? Like, if they've gotten nothing out of this that we've talked about, just what are the main things for them to be safe?
Take a CPR and an AED course, first aid, or a wilderness first aid, or at the bare minimum, a Stop the Bleed course. Stop the Bleed is an hour-long course. It's not that long. It's very simple. Like I said, bleeding out is the number one preventable cause of death.
I will say, because I know somebody's going to ask me, can you explain what is the difference between first aid and wilderness first aid?
So the regular first aid through the American Heart Association is just fairly basic. It's got how to help somebody use an EpiPen, how do we find the problem, some basic splinting and bleeding control. Whereas the wilderness first aid is just exactly what the name says. It's actually a 2-day long, 16-hour course that is designed specifically for first aid out in the wilderness, like national parks, homesteads, stuff like that, where you are not likely to find help immediately.
Might look into that.
Something we should do.
Yeah. So I wonder, would you just type in wilderness first aid course, or, I don't know, I guess, where do you go to find the wilderness first aid course?
I would say I can get you some information on it so that you can put it out on your social medias. But yeah, you can type out wilderness first aid classes. Like I said, it is a 2-day, 16-hour long class. You just have to find an instructor, and I believe that one is done through ECSI.
So, tons of information, tons of stuff to think on. We are doing some things okay, and some things we're not. Right. So we'll definitely be adjusting that personally for ourselves. Definitely I will include all the links. Another announcement I will say really quickly, 2 things, I guess. One is we have started a YouTube. The YouTube was suggested to us. So what's going to happen is we're uploading all the episodes that have happened, and with some just minor pictures and their links. And then what will happen that the YouTube will allow is there are some participants speaking who are going to speak in the future, and some that we've already interviewed that are, considering. And that what will happen is on YouTube, we'll announce when the recording is, and then we'll be able to live stream it. So you'll be able to ask the speaker questions in real time, not just rely on my questions, and be able to be part of the conversation. We'll also be having special giveaways over there, in addition with the Facebook group for listening, and just so many other things that'll be going on. We will have some people will be able to interview in person, and so they will be actually on video doing their podcast. So a lot of things will come with that, so stay tuned. But it is also on YouTube under Homestead Happenings with VB. We have a Facebook group, Homestead Happenings with VB Podcast, and you can also find us on Instagram, same name. And of course, listen in and subscribe, turn on your notifications anywhere you get your podcasts. We will have all of Ashlee's information in the post on all the social media. We will have the website for the business in the show notes of this episode. And we are just really excited that everything's going so well. Saturday this week, which is a new day, we will be here coming back, and we are going to, B and I are going to be going over the first month, thoughts, reflections, answering some questions that have come in, and we will be announcing the first giveaway. It will be November's giveaway. You will need to listen in so that you can figure out how you can enter that and what's going to be happening. It'll be great. And on that note, thank you so much for your time, and I really appreciate you spending this time with us and sharing all this knowledge with us and sharing some laughs.
Absolutely, no problem. Thank you for having me.
Yes, you have a great night.
You too. Thanks.
Bye.